Hi everyone, I'm Jennifer Scapitone. I teach here in English, creative writing, Romance languages, and I'll be welcoming you tonight. It may be difficult for citizens, for persons, to define themselves as poets in this indifferent, nay, antagonistic day and age, but it is not difficult for C.A. Conrad, who, in his own words, prefers poet to human as self-definition. It may well be difficult in times of crisis to conceive of why the disregarded, and when regarded, so often institutionally fenced voice of poetry matters, how it possibly might resound beyond the podium inside the fortress from which it reputedly hails. But it is not difficult for C.A. Conrad. For in times of crisis, we need to invent new forms in which to mourn, in which to rage, in which to see, in which to sweeten the everyday. And for those forms, we can still look to poetry, to that form of creativity which defines itself most rudimentarily, if that is indeed an adverb, as making, poesis. Littering the condominiums and the million-dollar estates with expired Atlantic City coupons and jars of Hellmann's licked clean, slipping a penny under tongue mouth full of orange in honor of the fruit and metal of Aphrodite, meditating on love while writing about poverty, asking strangers, including violently homophobic strangers, to rate the texture of their semen, driving to the speeches of the president-elect at full blast and submerging the body in increasingly colder waters, even if it means smearing our lenses with Vaseline. Having written serially of a persona who dissolves into the sheets every night, not a man, but a stain, in the book of Frank, and enabled Prozac poster girls to talk to Elvis in advanced Elvis course, C.A. Conrad began producing somatic poetry exercises, later named as rituals, in which to more fully inhabit the present moment. Returning to the rural Pennsylvania town of his youth, where a coffin factory enabling people to take pride in their work had been replaced by the dehumanizing machinery of a dental floss factory, C.A. Conrad decided that he had taken the factory with him to Philadelphia and devised these rituals as a strategy for getting it out, for being fully present. In 1851, John Ruskin decried the way that factories divided not only labor but men, quote, so that all the little piece of intelligence that is left in a man is not enough to make a pin or a nail, but exhausts itself in making the point of a pin or the head of a nail, so that we manufacture everything there except men. We blanch cotton and strengthen steel and refine sugar and shape pottery, but to brighten, to strengthen, to refine, or to form a single living spirit never enters into our estimate of advantages, unquote. Ruskin's admittedly flawed, because hierarchical, solution was the generation of social affections. And social affections, leveled and radicalized, are those meditated on and generated by the embodied practices of C.A. Conrad's A Beautiful Marsupial Afternoon and Ecodeviance, Somatics for the Future Wilderness, as well as a forthcoming collection also published by Wave Books. C.A. Conrad is the author of 7 books, a 2014 Lannan Fellow, a 2013 McDowell Fellow, and a 2011 Pew Fellow. He also conducts workshops, and you can visit him online at caconrad.blogspot.com, and it's well worth your time. Pig says to Frank, "This fence keeps you in your world." Frank says to Pig, "This fence keeps you in your world." Pig says to Frank, "This fence keeps you in your world." Frank says to Pig, "This fence keeps you in your world." Pig says to Frank, "This fence keeps you in your world." This poem from the Book of Frank makes its own oblique manifesto against the blindness of pseudo-autonomy in which packers and hogs, humans and beasts, police and protagonists imprison themselves in their own worlds, dividing their very spirits, even while pointing and reveling in the fencing off of the others without. I'm so glad to have C.A. Conrad here tonight to model for us deviant propulsions away and toward one another, to present the grounding and often euphoric strategies and results of this generous, community-generating poetics of a future, when the future appears to us as devoid of all wildness, both human and non. Please help me welcome him to Chicago.
Thank you. That was a beautiful introduction. Thank you all for coming. I'm happy to be here. So as Jen was saying, I create rituals, and then I work through those rituals to find the language to make poetry. So I'm going to share with you 3 new rituals and the resulting poems. I was actually hoping to have finished the poem for one ritual Jen was mentioning about listening to Donald Trump's speeches after the election. I drove from San Francisco to New York. It takes me 9 days. I think it takes some people 7, but I drive slow. And so I'd wake up in the morning and Fox News was replaying his speeches from the night before on his... Well, the campaign was over. I don't know what it was. Kind of this like thank you. It was just like he just was so addicted to campaigning. I think he just kept doing it. But so I would play those and then I would submerge myself in water. But I didn't finish it. That's okay. I have these to read. The first one I'm going to read, I'm not going to talk too much about the praxis because I'm going to be doing that tomorrow. I'm just going to read a couple of rituals and the resulting poems. This first one, I'm not going to read the ritual because the prose explanatory note is entirely too long. So I'm just going to tell you what I did. I had a boyfriend named Earth, who was living for a while in Tennessee at a queer community, a queer spiritual community, and he was working in the gardens. And I was on the phone with him, and he told me about a cave he had discovered on the mountain, on the side of the mountain, and he was meditating in this cave every morning. And it was very exciting to hear about this, and we were making plans for me to visit and see the cave and everything else. And then 3 days later, the word came back to town in Philadelphia, where I was living at the time, that he had committed suicide. And I just knew that wasn't possible. And his identical twin brother came into the queer bookstore where I was working at the time and showed me the death certificate, and it was clear that this was a homicide. I immediately plunged into trying to deal with this. The police in Tennessee were somewhat cordial in the beginning, but the more I pressed them to investigate, the angrier they became, to the point the sheriff just called me faggot as my name on the phone and then threatened to arrest me if I went back down to Tennessee. It was, as you can imagine, horrendous. He was hogtied with his ankles and wrists tied together. He was raped and tortured and then covered in gasoline and burned alive. In fact, the coroner's report is that he died from the inhalation of the accelerant. So he was alive when he was burning, which is just if that's not hard enough to deal with, to have to do with the police acting the way they did is even makes it much worse. So as you can imagine, when I finally I knew that I wasn't going to get anywhere with this, the depression started to set in. And it was rather beyond me and any depression that I'd previously lived with. It was so horrendous for a few months that I really just couldn't imagine anything being different at that point. I just felt like this is it. This is the way you wake up every morning from now on. But so I did 3 rituals to try to overcome the depression. I say 3 because the first 2 did not work out. Well, they worked out in the sense that the poems that resulted from the rituals were okay, enough to publish them, whatever. But I didn't feel any better. The third one worked. The third one worked because I finally did the work that needed to be done. And it was just too difficult, I guess, the first two, and I couldn't handle it. So the last time I saw Earth alive, he gave me a small crystal, a little over an inch in length, clear quartz crystal. If you're familiar with piezoelectricity and quartz crystal technologies used in computers, etc., crystals have not only the ability to keep a current in constant motion more than almost anything else on the planet, they also can store information. So this crystal had been on him every day for a year and a half. So I considered it a library of him. And don't mind me doing this. All these buildings are tropical feeling to me, so I'm just going to have to do this occasionally. But I put this crystal away. I didn't want it in my life. Whenever I would see it accidentally, it would ruin my day. So I realized that that's what I needed to do. I needed to use the thing that I didn't want to use. And it was very difficult, but I did it. I was very fortunate to receive a residency at the MacDowell Arts Colony. And every morning when I would wake up, I would put that crystal of his under my head wrap. And then I would swallow a smaller, round, clear quartz crystal. And that was what I considered the worker crystal. That crystal's job was to go into my body and draw out of his crystal all the information and embed it into my bones and flesh and blood. And it worked. Within a week, I was feeling completely different. There was a film that I'd created in my head, this ongoing movie of anger and disappointment and rage, really not just anger, but absolute rage at the police, the killers who were never caught, never even looked for them. And it all dissolved. That film dissolved within a week, and I started to just feel better and better by the day, and I feel like a completely changed person, and I owe it all to poetry. So I am going to read the last paragraph of the ritual. The last time I saw poet Aquila Oliver before she died, we were sitting at a bar at a poetry reading, and I told her of the ritual I was about to do to overcome my depression over Earth's murder. Not this ritual you are reading, but the first one, where I liked the resulting poem but felt no better. She was encouraging, and we spoke of death as a shared space with all life. And this conversation led us down a dark thread about our planet's pillaged ecosystems. In a panic, I said there was no way to fix our dying planet. She touched my shoulder and said, "CA, you are about to do a ritual to heal yourself, and you are part of the planet. So you're healing part of the planet by healing yourself." It made us both smile and toast to healing the planet by healing ourselves. And today I hold a glass to let Aquila know that it worked. I don't have a glass to toast, but that's how it ends, yeah. So anyway, I'm going to read 9 of these poems. It's a 27 section poem. I'm going to read 9 sections of it. And several of these are from what I call I've stopped calling them that, so I'm not going to even say it out loud. But they were dream poems. I would put the crystal under my pillow at night. And I did that only 9 times. And I would have the most violent, horrible dreams where I'm killing his killers. And so you'll see one of those. I won't need to let you. You'll know it when you'll see it. Let me tell you. So. And these poems took on their own shapes. This is a spider's web is made of digested fly brains, wings, hairs, legs, tears, pheromones, attracting more flies, dissolving us into the endeavor of love. Hold me to your song, it is delicious. Hear you one more time in middle of night, tooth it open. Love all unloved parts without pause. Dear ghost, flickering with flames that no longer hurt, deflated lungs expanding, you say they can only burn a faggot once. So that's the first of the series. It actually begins with a quote from Judy Grahn, the poet Judy Grahn's book, Another Mother Tongue, which is a book that changed my life in 1991 when I came across it at the pagan festival. Not the motorcycles, other kinds of pagans. And it's a book about the history of queer people in ancient Europe and pagan times and our place. Very different. It's very clear when you start seeing the history of where queer people were in the different tribes throughout Europe, why the church found queer people so dangerous that we had to be gotten rid of. And her whole book is about that. And the word faggot comes from the burning times. It comes from taking the witches. The Inquisition in particular didn't believe a witch's flesh could burn by flames alone, so they would take her gay men, her followers, and put them amongst the sticks, the bunches of faggot sticks, and so we became synonymous with those sticks. The weight of a poem on paper is equal to its labor. For the verbose are poets who prune the words like me. Did they love any part of you when asphyxiating your song? I lost a pen, a book, some money, feeling unexpectedly closer to you. I emptied closets, bureaus, cabinets, grated a carrot and refused to stop. Did they love anything at all when covering you in gasoline? What would I not give? What would I not squander to be your champion loser? How can it possibly be? How could they light the match? Your rapists were the last to taste you in this world. Their breath and terror down your neck keeps me up at night. But which page of the Bible says to burn the faggot after you force him to give you your pleasure? Each time I drink water dropped from clouds, water they burned out of your body, I cut my hands to catch you. In the revenge dream, I behead one of them, spell your name on my face with his blood. The other is begging as I choke him, his neck as soft as your neck. I pull him off his knees, check for tattoos. Is it him? Is it you? I miss you. I love you. My need to attack your killers, this is where I failed you. I should give them a trophy, a faggot-killing trophy. They won. Jesus-loving faggot killers always win. How strong was my failure to keep you alive? I am sorry coming out the golden head of dandelion smashing through cement. Universe expanding at cruel speed. Sorry hog's room in the stomach. A horizon we let into our eyes. Can only finish this poem with those eyes. Smashed through cement, lonely and sick with glory of the bloom. The spirit of your flowers is my favorite shelter. We were in love is the main thing. Faintest green light in tree pulls me forward. Whenever life is beautiful makes me think of you. Carry color of the forest to be with you. To belong to this world with you, to have what we have, and that is it. Yes, the present is between the past and future, but is too radical to be called the middle. I need more of this. Poetry or another shovel working where the real America buried you. The kind of men shown a table with blueprints of our city to destroy us. When they punish us, it is exactly how we knew it would feel. Places with the least warmth, exchanged with places we miss one another in. Sunlight snorkel of corn silk as the hummingbird drinks your wounds away. Fuck the real America up the ass with the fake one. Let it all be done, you said. Let it all be done, I said. Another poet apologizes at a microphone, weakening the hull of our ship. If you can't believe in your poems, leave them at home until you learn to deserve them. This poem This poet will not apologize. I'm tired of smelling my dead boyfriend, his swimming arms lost to my bed. It hurts to admit I love being alive. I broke, and those pieces broke, and those pieces crushed to powder. Things to avoid saying around me, take it like a trooper. Stiff upper lip, keep it together. Don't let your mouth say these things. Don't let your comfort be selfish cruelty. Let them shriek, let them sob. Don't be a coward about love. I got told all those things, and I called everybody a coward. I was not interesting. I was not interested in having that conversation, so I would just end it. Dear Earth, it is okay to not roll the stone back uphill. We rent memory storage in the world you left behind. Little wonder in this dell of broken treaties, daisies bend under our slightest breath. You did not answer after you died. It is when I learned to be lonely everywhere, between dreaming and crying until it calcified and fell off. So those belong to that ritual, and that ritual is called Mount Monadnock Transmissions. This case, I'm going to read the ritual and the resulting poem. This ritual is titled Denise Levertov versus Bruce Lee for Ray Armantrout. She's my favorite language poet. Everybody has one. Denise Levertov is buried in Lakeview. Oh, the reason I dedicate it to Ray Armantrout was a student of Denise Levertov's. Denise Levertov is buried in Lakeview Cemetery in Seattle, Washington. For this somatic poetry ritual, I would first walk through Volunteer Park, which is next to the cemetery, one of the most beautiful urban parks I've ever had the pleasure to visit. Crows are one of my favorite kinds of people on Earth, and there are thousands of them in Seattle, living like pigeons do in other cities. And several in Volunteer Park knew I would feed them and would follow me from tree to tree until I sat in the grass. In animal spirit lore, the crow represents finding our higher authority, choosing a more enlightened direction for our lives. After feeding the crows, I would take notes for the poem, then close my eyes to listen to the world around me for a little while. I would then walk into the cemetery, giving myself 27 minutes after passing through the gates to locate the poet Denise Levertov's headstone. If I did not find it, I would spend an hour in front of the grave where I stood. Bruce Lee is also buried at Lakeview, and his dedicated superfans would take the pilgrimage. Throughout the afternoon, young men whipped off their shirts to do martial arts moves in front of the headstone, while their girlfriends made videos with their phones. Those distinct sounds Bruce Lee made with his voice being imitated, echoing throughout the cemetery. I am certain I'm not the only one to read a Denise Levertov poem aloud with Bruce Lee sound effects as the backup vocals. I would read, quote, "He himself must be the key now to the next door, the next terrors of freedom and joy," unquote. The best rituals are when the unexpected inserts itself. Well, for instance, I didn't know Bruce Lee was buried there. That inserted itself. One day, while I looked quietly for Levertov, there was a young man watching me. He was dressed in black with thick black eyeliner and fingernail polish. He wanted to know what I was doing, said he had been watching me. I asked why he was there, and he told me he liked to masturbate behind a shrub, while watching the half-naked young men do karate. What shrub? I didn't see a shrub. He took me to the shrub that was nowhere near Bruce Lee, but of course we could hear the superfans making their warrior cries. We had sex every day from that point on, and it became part of my ritual and part of my notes for the poem. When I found Levertov, he wanted us to ejaculate on her grave, but I vehemently forbade it, stating that we should only consecrate a gravesite if the poet would appreciate a shower of our semen, like Jack Spice or John Wieners or some other faggot poet. I insisted that Levertov needed our tenderness, and we kissed instead and held hands while I read the poem The Broken Sandal, where she says, quote, "Where was I going I can't go to now unless hurting? Where am I standing if I'm to stand still now? The notes became a poem titled, Poem as Storm, Not as Refuge. Poem as storm, not as refuge. Where is the old druid who loved me when my tide slammed his door? Statue of Kafka looking like Judy Garland looking like me. Life is about choices, is what assholes with the best choices say. Take the Voyager crack beneath it. Riots on TV with commercials of cars, making men inside them clench their sphincters. It all happens with signals through mist. Cocks swinging to attention. Horny is not cynical, they promise. Glory keeping firm their soft road to genocide. A black spot of map. Capitalism and religion is no place to stand between. My song flushed from ear to page. The old druid loved it through his guitar. Furniture of future wastelands open to us. Wondering is like falling all over the mind. Kissing at edge of a landfill, no thought of death with his tongue in my mouth, no fear defense in a sentence. We tear holes in the wall to watch plants grow. Love one another enough for the missing parts. Can you blame me? Became you can blame me. My cousin got me drunk to convince me to repent, something his pastor taught him. I told his daughter, when you're ready to rebel against that bastard, here's my number. I will travel to you no matter where you are. And speaking of bastards, the third one. So the new book coming out later this year is called While Standing in Line for Death. Because I thought I would really go for an optimistic title. Because it is optimistic, you're standing. But in this book there are three rituals that are political actions, and they're called power sissy interventions, 1, 2, and 3. This is the third one? Yeah, this is the third one. The first one I did, a lot of, the thing is you have to go to Europe to get anybody who actually knows what's going on in the United States. There are more than 200 anti-lesbian, gay, transgender laws being issued right now. And that has nothing to do with Trump. This has been going on for the last year and a half. And nobody's been doing anything about it. And everybody's very familiar with the HB2 law in North Carolina, but that's not it. They're everywhere. Mississippi, Tennessee, Virginia just announced a new one. And they're rolling in, and I was really hoping for Hillary Clinton's Supreme Court to make these unconstitutional, but that's not going to happen now. And I was excited about the HB2 law being dissolved when Pat McCrory, who I'm about to read about in North Carolina, lost his seat on Election Day, but then the Congress went in and stripped the incoming Democrat governor of all of his powers. So he made an announcement that he is unable to rescind HB2. So I'm going to read the ritual. Power sissy intervention number 3. Well, the first one I did, I sort of live in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm never there, but I love it. That's where my books are, basically, and my friends, but some of my friends. But I travel a lot, but when I am home, I'm very happy there. It's a beautiful place. It's different than any place I've lived before. But anyway, it's right in the heart, of course, the HB2 law with all these Nazis. So this is specifically about the HB2 law. Power sissy intervention number 3. Oh, I didn't finish. So in Nashville, the first ritual I did, I took a bottle of bubbles, children's bubbles, and I was blowing bubbles on a very busy street corner. And then, of course, everybody has kids these days, so there are lots of kids around. And they come up, and then their parents, I started to have a conversation with the parents. And I'll say, these are queer bubbles. They are magical queer bubbles. They're going to make all of your children queer. And queer is not gay and lesbian, because if you're queer, it's political. Don't be calling yourself queer if you're a racist or a misogynist. It ain't gonna work. I'll be there to tell you to stop. But out of Queer Nation, ACT UP, I take queer very seriously. So that was fun. The second one I took, I grew up in with a Pentecostal family who absolutely loathe homosexuals. And I had the book of Romans quoted to me continuously by family members. So what I did was I took those 9 pages of Paul's letter to the Romans, and I pulverized each page. Well, I would read them and then put them in a suppository and then stick each page up my ass 9 days in a row. And then I would go into town and ring the bell. I had this big bell, and I would yell the names of the dead. I had a boyfriend who died of AIDS in the 90s. I went to 54 funerals in 1991 of friends who died of AIDS. I named all the people in the Orlando shooting, and of course my boyfriend who was murdered, and many other people. Power Sissy intervention number 3, Powerball Vagina. Quote, Dr. King's policy was that nonviolence would achieve the gains for black people in the United States. His major assumption was that if you are nonviolent, if you suffer, your opponent will see your suffering and will be moved to change his heart. That's very good. He only made one fallacious assumption. In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must first have a conscience. The United States has none. Stokely Carmichael from a 1967 speech in Stockholm. I believe that it's time for the gay and lesbian community to just stop with all this nonsense about thinking that we're going to make any roads in these governments in the United States, state or local or federal at this point. And I think about people like Stokely Carmichael, these brave people in the Black Power movement, and these are the people we need to be looking toward for help in any way at this point. And we have, the HRC, Human Rights Campaign. I don't know if you pay attention, but they publish an annual report of the best places for gay and lesbian people to be working. Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Monsanto, like the world's largest weapons manufacturer. The gay and lesbian movement is just completely wedded now to this military-industrial complex and a lot of other horrendous things, like biological terrorism through Monsanto. Spare any money? I'm reading The Ritual. I panhandled outside Asheville's downtown Books and News to buy lottery tickets to win big time to pay for surgery for a new vagina. I will name a patch of pubic hair after Governor McCrory, whose mouth looks like a little talking asshole. The McCrory patch, I will call it, and it will be kept combed and trimmed, and I will rub my thumb in a circular pattern into the patch when his angry asshole lips are in the news. He has been a Christian extremist politician for as long as anyone around here can remember, and he is the architect of the HB2 law that prevents transgender people from using public toilets that match their gender identity. He tried to stop a production of the play Angels America. He tried to prevent the Charlotte Gay Pride Parade from marching in a public space. This is recent, by the way. This isn't like the 50s. Suggesting that they have the gathering in a hotel. He also supported the YMCA for refusing membership to an openly gay man and his partner and son, stating in a letter to the man that he might want to consider a gym membership at the Jewish Community Center. McCrory's supporters create prayer chains from the driveway at his mansion in Asheville and down the highway, praying that the governor keep their Christian extremist values intact. I took notes for the poem. One man said it was rude to name a patch of pubic hair after the governor. I said it was rude of the governor to legislate hatred. Every time Christian extremist politicians speak out against LGBTQ people, they sanction gay bashing and promote self-hatred in LGBTQ people who are already straining to negotiate survival in a highly charged religious and political landscape of bigoted morality. The culture of destroying queers is alive and well, and we need public action. I have come to vandalize American Christian values, for they have cost the lives of some beautiful people I loved very much. I understand my family's passion for Jesus, but I put my passion into poetry. We don't have to read the Bible for too long to see how Christianity exploits my family's poverty and a lack of education. I could never follow a martyr. I would only follow the dirt, a poetics of dirt licking moss growing on a beautiful tree. Spare some money so I can play Powerball for a new vagina. I took notes for the poem and bought some lucky feeling tickets that made my brand new vagina sparkle and tingle in the future. So this is dedicated to T.C. Tolbert. Dear T.C. Tolbert, as long as we live, we win. My name arriving on lips of new friends. I need these people. The realization a hard set of controls for the soul. I first learned about my poetry vagina in a dream. Pegasus flying over your barking dog, a hoof in the sky. All friends of the wind let loose. Blood carries the nature of our insurrection to every cell, troubling their heaven with utmost hands-on feeling of release. In another life, our tails accidentally touched. We squeaked, kissed, made room in the branches. Happy whenever such a life is possible. The only thing to do with paper and pen is to make one touch the other. My poetry vagina is greased on the rituals of the poems. Another kind of happiness. Hold still, brother squirrel. Tiny piece of sunlight to lick off your face. Mommy's a movie star now. You better get used to it. The dog comes running in and freezes, just in time for the shutter to click. Thank you for having me.